All right, well, welcome everybody. We had that a couple of minutes just getting ourselves set up there, so thank you for your patience, and then that allowed plenty of people to join. So glad to see you on board with us today. cubesys runs a whole series of discussion series, and I'll explain the format in a second. But today we're going to focus in on Copilot for M365, and in particular how that's impacting the not-for-profit and healthcare sectors. Do you just want to go to the format, Chris? Thank you. This is a discussion format. We do welcome questions. We're more than happy for you to jump on chat or, and pose some questions for the people on the panel. So love to hear that interaction. We do record this session so we can follow it up afterwards. And so if you miss out on anything or you want to share it with colleagues, we'll help you with that. Yeah, we'll send that out afterwards. Let's then do a quick acknowledgement of country. We've got people all over the place, as we often do in these webinars, from different parts of the country, so we've adapted that a little bit. So let me read through that. I acknowledge that we are recording this discussion from the lands of traditional custodians of various lands on which we all work today. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And with the formalities out of the way, let's do some introductions. I'm actually going to throw you straight in there, guys, and get you talking. So, Mark, would you like to introduce yourself, mate? And I'm looking forward to some insights from you today. And that was a pun on purpose, right? And we'll go from there. So, Mark, would you like to introduce yourself and who you are and what you do?
Yes, I'm Mark. I head up the Architecture and Insights team here at Lifeline. Been with Lifeline for about 5 years now. Come from a traditional sort of data background, and obviously, advancements in AI and Copilot of interest to us. I'm actually on the Bunjalong Nation today, so it's a bit wet up here, but not too bad up near Lismore.
Good to hear. Thank you, Matt. And Sandra, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Wilson. I'm the modern work specialist in the TSI team. We call it in Tech for Social Impact team in Microsoft. So I'm dedicated resource for NFP organization. So I see some familiar names. But if you don't know me, I'm the modern work specialist. People used to call me Copilot lady last year, but nobody call me that anymore this year. So I think everybody become a Copilot guru now. So nice to see everyone here. And then we're going to talk a little bit more on the Copilot stuff. I'm struggling with the end of winter virus going on in Sydney at the moment. So if I need to cough a little bit, I'm sorry for that.
Thanks, Sandra. And alongside me here in the office at cubesys, I've got Chris.
Hi, everyone. I'm a senior cloud consultant here at cubesys. I come with a plethora of background in more traditional infrastructure, security, networking. But in the last 4 years that I've been here at cubesys, obviously transitioned quite heavily into cloud, and been working with the team quite closely around Copilot for M365. Not only the rush to adoption, but also the rush to actually secure and I guess leverage other security architecture that's needed to make that possible.
Cool. Let me quickly give you a high level of the discussion today. I'm going to ask Chris in a moment to sort of explain the architecture of Copilot, get everybody onto a sort of baseline understanding of how it works. Pretty high level, but we'll make sure everybody understands what's happening inside Copilot. I've got a couple of stats that I've pulled from Microsoft and LinkedIn's work study over the last couple of years, so I'll just run through those quickly. And then I'm going to hand over to Sandra and ask her what's been happening in the environment, what we've seen with Copilot over the last 12 months. It really ramped up. And I'm going to ask Mark to chip in about why Lifeline's looking at Copilot and where they are on their journey. Once we've done that and we've worked through some of the benefits and some of the razzmatazz of Copilot and getting a good understanding where it's having an impact and what the intended use cases are, we'll then jump into a little bit about, well, what are some of the challenges to get going and what should we be careful with? And that's where we'll go back to Chris and Mark and ask them about where they are on their governance journey and how we make sure that Copilot for M365 lands securely, safely in your organization. You can leverage it carefully. And then we'll probably wrap up at the end there with a bit of a summary. So, Chris, I might hand over to you there to have a look at the architecture of Copilot and make sure that we're understanding how it all sort of fits together.
Yeah, look, Microsoft Copilot 365 is can be seen as a bit of a black box, can be seen as a broader piece of architecture. This is a fairly simplified version of that architecture. Obviously, we've got our M365 apps. We've got the Copilot engine, I guess, in the middle, which is obviously leveraging a large language model behind it that's built off the responsible AI principles, hosted in obviously Azure and OpenIO platforms. And then we've obviously got the Microsoft Graph components, where we're talking about providing Copilot with that grounding and context from your environment. So Copilot, and you can see kind of the flow of a prompt and the return of a response through something like Copilot. The first part of that is you creating a request, a prompt to the Copilot. And Copilot then sends that request with some pre-processing information down to the graph. And the graph is all about getting that context. It's finding what you have access to as the individual, what meetings, what files, what SharePoint sites, for example. It's taking that prompt and taking all the information that you have access to, throwing that into the large language model, where it will then process your prompt and your question, right, per se, and against the context that you've provided it, sends that back through the API to the graph, making sure that it then sends a semantic process for post-processing, which is more about then formulating your response and getting that response then to feedback to wherever you've requested it, whether it's from Outlook or from Word or Teams or PowerPoint. And then that's when it starts to do its magic around, okay, it's going to start, for example, in PowerPoint, going to start creating all your additional slides, or in Word, start outputting all of the prompt output for creating the job description that you've requested it to create for you. So ultimately, this indexing piece around the response and app command is really important. And yes, Copilot is built off that responsible AI model on Azure OpenAI. So it's a big part of that is not necessarily visible. The other thing that a lot of people think about is, well, am I giving this large language model my data, or am I training it? And the responsible AI model suggests that no, you're definitely not, right? Your data doesn't get stored in the large language model. You're not training the large language model. That's all been done for you. And Microsoft have taken all of the heavy lifting around building that AI model for you to then simply consume it as a user.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I think maybe Copilot can be summarized in that architecture as a SaaS version of AI. And Mark, you would be, and your team would probably be looking at some other areas of AI, right? Where you're building models yourself and getting involved in different areas. But I wanted to be really clear with the Copilot thing. Think of it more like as a SaaS model. We leverage that capability that's already there for us in a responsible way and using the right governance for that. Excellent. Okay. Thanks, Chris. So let's just. I'm going to jump before I pass to Sandra. I just wanted to jump into a couple of stats that I dug out from the Work Trend Index. So we've had a look back at the 2023 response, right, and what the report was talking about there was the pace of work and our ability to keep up, right? And that was a big theme part of that journey. And there's some stats there on the screen for you that people were finding it hard to stay focused and have uninterrupted time. They were spending way too much time searching for information, and the stats for that were very high. And then they were spending a lot of time in meetings and emails and chat, right? And all of those things were indicating that they were impacting that productivity section. And if I fast forward to this year's work indexing, and Chris, you want to jump to the next slide for me? Interesting to see how AI is impacting that, right? And this is something we'll probably talk about a little bit later on in the webinar, is that employees are already using AI. So whether you sanction it, whether you've bought a Copilot license and are governing it and doing it properly within your business in a structured way or not, people are using it. They're out there making use of ChatGPT and things, right? So it's happening already, right? Interestingly, when they do use that AI, it saves them time. They're pretty confident of that. It really helps them focus and be more creative, and they enjoy that work more. Those stats are pretty significant percentages, right? They're there. And from a personal stat at the end there, I know for me, I spend a lot of time in meetings, right? And the amount of benefit I get from Copilot in summarizing my meetings and being able to get good actions and stuff like that is phenomenal, right? So maybe before I just pass to Sandra there and we'll talk about how Microsoft is seeing Copilot land in our industries. Mike, maybe I'll prompt you and ask you where.
It's not a Copilot.
It's not a Copilot. Well, it's AI. Well, it's actual intelligence, not artificial intelligence. That's what we're going to rely on here. So, Mark, using your AI, do you want to comment on some of those things and where Lifeline was thinking? Because what I'm seeing from those stats is that we're talking about upping productivity, right? And not replacing roles or removing people from the organization. It's how we get more from our people and enable them to do more for us. So is that where you're heading with Lifeline? Is that the thought process?
Yeah, it's definitely that. I mean, I see it. It's not there to replace anything. It's there to augment stuff. So, as most of you know, working in the not-for-profit and healthcare, there's a very purpose-driven sort of culture. But some of the stuff that we have to do is, let's say, boring. So using AI to help us do more with less and focus on those more purposeful things that you actually and stuff that you're working on is something that we're definitely looking at, being able to lift people's productivity, to your point, Paul, and see where it can help us with that. And as we find ourselves doing more remote working, the use of Teams and meetings and things like that sort of lends itself towards that. So really excited to see where that will help. There's AI in other areas that we're looking at as well, not help seeker facing, but more in sort of training and understanding some of our operational manuals and our there's quite a large body of training material that's required in order to become a crisis supporter on the phones at Lifeline. We haven't had a chance to look at that properly, but that's certainly something that we will be having a look at to see whether we can find that access to information and streamline that. So those of you who have been around a while, sort of the knowledge acquisition, knowledge representation side of things, I think AI has a place to play in that, being able to give users access to the information they need when they need it.
Yeah, good. Now I'm going to get you to hold off on the first stat there, because that's I feel quite concerning that people are actually using AI already, right? And we're going to talk about like controlling that and moving them towards Copilot and why that's important as an organization. But we'll hold off that and we'll jump to Sandra and ask what Microsoft are seeing in the ecosystem at the moment, right? And where that's going.
Yeah, so since the Copilot, so what I'm taking care of in the entire AI structure is more focused on the Copilot for M365, that little area. We call kind of an out-of-box solution. So it's basically license adding on users, right? And then you'll be able to actually access to all the functionalities on Teams and then OneDrive and SharePoint Online, making document using Words and PowerPoint and Excel. So this is an out-of-box solution, very different from Azure OpenAI. It's very use case based and then customized solution. However, the backend probably very similar from the technical point of view. So what we found out so I'm dedicating an NFP, so if you have customers, probably slightly different. But we do have aged care customers. What we found from a couple of customers that kind of heavily invested into the Copilot and using it is this part of a Copilot for M365. It's very focused on productivity for general workers, admins, or people that have to use the Office suite quite a lot. People are get a benefit from it very differently, depends the daily job. So when I speak to different business unit and different people using the Copilot, I found that so there are applications that everybody use, right? Email use, Teams these days, everybody use, right? So that's the very similar kind of a benefit from it. But from other parts of the suite, it really depends on that. So one of the thing I really like from one of my customers saying that I feel like it's assistant. So if you need to quickly gather some information, understand something, instead of you going ahead to research and then change a keyword research and change a keyword again research and then verify the information, and this Copilot will give just acting like assistant. You can actually leave quite a lot of stuff for the system to do, and you just add the human brain on top of it, and then that intelligent make the result of what you needed, right? So this is a very very interesting that basically you're talking to different person, does different job. It gives you a kind of a little bit different feedback. Copilot has been out for 8 months now, and then I have to say that in NFP kind of a not-for-profit industry, we have in Australia, I didn't count it don't quote me on actual numbers, but I'm trying to run the report to understand a bit more. We have about 1,300 users actively using Copilot every day. And then that's the customers we're talking to, trying to understand the feedback, trying to understand how to improve and how to help people to adopt and use it, get the value out of it. So I'm going to share my slide now, Paul, is that okay? Because when I speak to customers on or anyone on Copilot, even my friend working account firm, and then the question coming up is, okay, so how can I start with it? How can I get ready? What do I really need to do with it, right? It's I can't just enable a license and leave people to use it. So I'm probably a lot of people join today's webinar are from IT. Because that's where my context is. So we don't really have that many business people join the different business lines join the meeting, but that's fine. But let's face it, a lot of time the IT department get a request from the business unit, right, to say, I would like to using AI. I would like to leverage AI in my daily job. So let me share my slide.
It's interesting you say that, Sandra, because I think that's where Mark and Lifeline reached out to cubesys. So I think there's two parts of onboarding. One is about forming those new habits and new thinking to use Copilot, and that's very role specific, and I'm sure you're going to dive into that. And then the other part of getting ready is really around making sure that we're governed and safe so we can use it effectively. But we'll please dive into the roles and stuff. I'm really keen to hear what your experience.
So I have to say Microsoft is a little bit lacking of marketing or proper slides before. So the documents I was using before, I have to say that was very high level, really not really talking about from an operational point of view, from organization point of view, from the leader of IT, right, point of view. Where should I start? What I need to look into. So it's definitely getting better. So today I'm not going to show that many slides. We have probably thousands of decks I went through yesterday and last week trying to figure out what I need to, which one makes sense. So I really want to start with this slide is only one slide, just be with me. People know me, I don't really like to talk too much about on the slide, but this is a get ready, right? So what does get ready really mean? Get ready also means that where should I start, right? What I need to consider before I even pull it out and then show and get the license or show it to my internal people. So outside of that, we talk about the security readiness, right? Data security readiness and the networking readiness. This is something we kind of very get ready, focus on the Copilot piece. So I have been spoken to people from HR, marketing, operations, and the not some of the NFP does have sales team and finance. This is the only chance that for me in working a vendor in IT for that long, have a chance talking to different business unit people. Normally I talk to IT, right? Sometimes I go on the website and then go on the online or LinkedIn to find, okay, what business that you're running, what's critical for you to run the business. But I'm just reading through. But this is the first time I actually get a chance to talk to different people to understand it. And I realized that the Copilot adoption, right, if say from IT point of view, I want to make sure that this is a new tool coming out for you guys, and then please use it. How are they going to use it, right? How are they going to learn how to use it? This is a very critical part, and a lot of organizations kind of stop there because it's not clear. Let's face it, it's not clear. So I want to put it here very clearly that it's not just IT, it's the entire organization to think about getting on the AI journey. Everybody has to contribute a little bit into it. Yes, a lot of work will be landed on IT and us to help to train and then learn, but it's everyone. So I used to have this question, how can we help? Because I'm in a pre-sale position. I say I do a good job as a pre-sale in Microsoft, but I don't really know what HR does every day, what marketing does every day, what's a critical piece for their daily job. How can Copilot help them from that point of view? My demo is a very high level, very general, right? It's a tool. Let's just use it in that way. So that's what I'm trying to figure out how can I help. It was it's amazing. Like about a few weeks ago, we get this updated website. It's a public website. I want to show everyone. If you are thinking of the Copilot and trying to understand where we should start, how people benefit from it, or you're trying to do a business case, this will help you a lot. Just let me grab the website. So this website called Copilot Scenario Library. It just came out. Actually, they put it very nicely. It has a draft version a long time ago. I didn't really use it because it wasn't really perfect. But now if you look at it, I actually really like it. I think I will share with after this webinar, we will send this link out to everyone. This is a good starting point for you to understand how different titles or different people that benefit from Copilot, or what solution you need for Copilot. For example, right? So when I did one of the demo for one customer, and then the human HR lady came to me and talked to me, said, well, you know what? This is gonna be a huge change. I said, what do you mean huge change? And she said, so before COVID, working from home is not a requirement when we actually trying to hire someone. And then after COVID, that become kind of, you have to put it there, you have to talk to people, people gonna ask, right? If you don't provide that flexibility, and then some people might, what do I want a job or not? So there's a big change there. With the Copilot, when you get used to it, like I'm on this for 8 months now. Being honest, if you ask me any license questions, things like that, I don't really go to different websites to check anymore. I'm using Copilot to get the answer. The only one extra step is I just verify the document. That's it, right? So because sometimes the document might be a bit old and then they're not updated. That's the only thing I verify. But I just ask questions, and the Copilot gave me all the information I needed. Right. So and then she said that with this Copilot being enabled for more people, that might be another thing to attract talent. So she's already ahead of everybody think about it. Well, I don't know that piece, right? I can't come up with that story. This is actually shared by a HR person in one of the NFP organizations. So this website will share why it's important for any of the IT people is for you to be able to understand what solution is suitable for which business line, and how we actually gonna support them, how them to get a benefit from it. So let's just use HR as, because every single company has a HR department and have a HR group. So if we click into it, you will be able to see that the goals and the challenges. And also this part is quite important as well. Scenarios of the Copilot can assist with. So you can click into like a specific area to have a look into that. And then the bottom will show you all the different pages that you can actually go into to find, okay, what I need to understand how Copilot can help. For example, cost per hire. That's very important from a finance point of view, HR point of view, right? This is number one thing. I'm sure that on the board meetings, people discuss if they need to get a new headcount. So if you click through that, that will actually give you more important and more information on, okay, so how can we using Copilot to help this process, improve the job description? You can leverage Copilot to write a job description and then adding the information into that. Instead of going to the template, going to the website to find something, you can actually Copilot to complete a draft for you literally within, say, half minute, 30 seconds. And then you just have to add your company special requirements into it. And then also the interesting part of that is actually help you define what role needs it, and then what solution would be benefited from it. As you can see, that is a Copilot for M365 and Microsoft 365 and a Copilot for Studio, because some of the time that the billing or the HR system using the data source not sitting in the Microsoft data center, so on the tenant. So you might want the studio to be able to pull the the data source from somewhere, some other applications into it to be able to leverage it. So it actually gives you really good kind of understanding of how can I start it, who should use it, what solution you need to focus on, and how can I support them. So this website, I say, it's collecting data from existing Copilot custom globally. It's very valuable. I will definitely share it out after the webinar to everyone. Another thing is, because there's so many updates in last month, because it's the first month of our fiscal year, we are still, me and Brioni that who's my technical specialist still trying to collect and go through, review all the updates and information. What we're gonna do, we're gonna send out monthly or quarterly updates for Copilot. So you will be able to get that updates from us probably every 3 months. In process, but we'll send out shortly. I hope this kind of helpful. From a Microsoft point of view, we are improving the document. We are improving, helping customer to support that. Okay, so how to start, how to get ready, what do we need to think about before we even go that AI journey? So I hope this is helpful, give you some kind of a confidence on that. So
yeah, thank you,
okay.
Sandy. It's really insightful and useful. And this area is moving at such a pace, right? I mean, you think about how quickly AI is being adopted inside of organizations. It's really quite scary. And Mark, I might jump to you for a second. That story that Sandra's telling is very much the conversations we've been having. And we're about to jump into the next bit where we make sure that we're safe to use that, and Chris will start talking. But that use case stuff is very much what we've been talking about, and identifying who in your business is going to be the champions. How do we integrate it? Where do we start using it? And it is very specific to roles, right? Which is something that maybe in IT we don't do enough of, and we should do. Right? And Copilot drives that. But where's Lifeline thinking and that adoption journey? Right?
Yeah, look, I mean, and we'll come on to the sort of security and enablement piece in a minute, but basically setting up a pilot group to become, like you say, champions, and use Copilot and provide them the scenarios that it might help with, and that might start. You don't need to do everything all at once. We might start. We're planning to start fairly small, looking at capturing stuff out of Teams meetings. Potentially, those of us who unfortunately have to write lots of documentation, there's going to be an area for that, crafting emails and then those sort of things. There's definitely a lot. There's some. We're finding that people are already using not Copilot, but using other AI tools to regenerate articles and some of our stuff on the self-led support toolkit that we publish on our website, all with a clinical oversight. So don't get worried. We're not just generating stuff and spamming the internet, but there's a clinical oversight in there. But that comes back to that sort of guardrails, finding where it's applicable to adopt in, and what guardrails or what processes or what governance do we need to put in place to make sure. Certainly, working in healthcare, it may be slightly different to working at a mortgage broker's firm or something. It is important that we do have the appropriate level of oversight as well. But certainly the speed to market, and to get stuff up and running. And the quality of it is actually really good. I mean, I'm not clinically trained, I'll say that up front. I come from the data side, but certainly speaking to the clinicians and everything, the quality that's available within the healthcare realm, not just for Copilot, but OpenAI and things like that. It's actually surprisingly good.
Yeah, it's a important point that Sandra made when she's using it, is that go back and just do that last validation and make sure that data's up to date and checks and things, right? So it's important. And the other bit probably is the first part, is having used Copilot for quite a while myself. I have to remember to use Copilot, so you've got lots of habits that you go and do, and you get into your normal sort of routine of finding and building information, writing a paper or whatever it might be. It's actually to remember to use Copilot. I found it really interesting when I've written important emails I want to send to clients and things, that just to use Copilot to go over, and generally it'll say your language could be a bit more positive, and you make suggestions and things. So even small tweaks like that really do help. It's like having somebody review it for you, and you never have time for your colleague to do that. But
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so let's maybe with that, all the benefits of AI and Copilot and some of the exciting stuff on how we can make us more productive behind it. Let's have a little talk about the next bit, because Mark, when you integrate reached out to cubesys to come and help you with Copilot, what you were also concerned about was governance, right? And we should also, as in IT, make sure we've got good guardrails. What we don't want to do is ever get in the way of our business being productive and effective, but we do need to make sure that we can do so in a compliant and safe way. So let's move over to Chris, and we'll talk a little bit about what we do to make sure that M365 is ready for our users.
Yeah, and I guess it does talk to that challenge of visibility, right? As well as, data security is probably the topic that is on everyone's lips, right? When it came to Lifeline coming up with an adoption approach and being prepared and ready for it. Obviously, the challenge of in the visibility of data and data security, as well as protecting that data from AI, right? And almost from putting in the right level of controls to make sure we're protecting what we share with our AI tools. A funny little stat at the end there that they do believe that by 2027, someone's going to be more or less deemed as non-compliant, right, based on AI governance. So I think these are controls and I guess challenges and gaps that I guess a lot of IT departments are taking back to the business and saying, hey, as a business, we need to work together to help identify what that gap is and how do we overcome that challenge. Like I was saying, the visibility into AI can result in compliance challenges for us, right? And they kind of stem into three key pieces. The first being a data leakage, where user may inadvertently leak sensitive information unaware to the AI apps, whether it's Copilot or a different variation of AI, generation AI. The two is the oversharing piece, where we might have access to sensitive data and then we're sharing it to people that are unauthorized to view that data and that information. So data oversharing is something that is one of those challenges as well. And the last one is the non-compliant usage, where users use generated AIs and things like that, but they use it in a slightly unethical way or a high risk, and they use it for high risk content. So three really key areas in our data security journey that we need to tackle and I know, Mark, from your experience, these were kind of three key areas inside that readiness piece for you guys.
I do want to share maybe sort of beyond AI a little bit, because you've worked in data for many, many years, and these things are on your mind a lot, right? So
yeah, it's sort of interesting. I mean, like this is not a new problem. Like when you had network drives and people had access to the HR directories because somebody forgot to switch it off, or somebody accidentally got added to some AD group that gave them access to data that they weren't necessarily needing to for the purpose of their role. So whilst it's I sort of look at this with two hats on. One is sort of, that's big and scary, but at the same point in time, it is an existing problem. I suppose it can manifest itself quicker with the use of AI, because obviously AI is the one that, if you remember the first picture that Chris pulled up, where the Microsoft graph is determining which access and which roles you've got things to do. Then with things like Copilot, if you have access accidentally to the HR records and you have no right to have access to them, depending on how it's set up and how it's configured, and won't go into the details, but we've been given some advice around how we might set that up or restrict some of that stuff. And I think also another one that's become a little bit evidence to us is the proliferation of teams for project work, and I think that points to the number two here. Behind the scenes, that's creating SharePoint sites, which is then giving a repository for documentation. So I might be part of a team and then not offboarded out of that team. So we're really looking at that sort of sanitizing life cycle of what you have access to. But like I say, I don't feel like it's a new risk or a new problem.
I think you're right. I think we've been doing it for 20 years, and like I said, the difference maybe is that AI technologies will surface that quicker, which is interesting. But I think having maybe sort of done an appropriate level of warning and let's be careful, let's talk about how we can actually solve some of these problems, because there is capabilities Microsoft bring to the table that will help us do this in a more modern way, right? And so jump into talking a bit about that.
And I think the first place to kind of look at is that shared responsibility model, which we all are very familiar with, right? We know shared responsibility with cloud services is a common trend and a common theme. Obviously, with Copilot, it's no different, right? There's a shared responsibility piece here where Microsoft are going to manage the environment and the black box, which is essentially the engine that we consume as a software as a service, and they'll do all the protection in the background. But as an organization, we need to think about how we're managing our access to AI apps, how we're creating user accountability for their AI usage, but also, and a really strong piece that Mark was kind of alluding to, not a new problem, but protecting that data that we've entered and created by the use of AI apps. And I think it kind of leverages that piece around, what Sandra said was, Copilot can create something within 30 seconds. Whilst I might have the permissions to do it myself to get that information, I might not be aware of that. So I think it's, protecting what access not only our individuals have, but what access we give the AI to as well. So I think it's a combination of both sides of the story there. Obviously, yes, and protecting the data is what I was kind of referring to. Look, Microsoft Purview is a really strong piece around our data security and our data security kind of componentry when it comes to the M365 landscape. Purview is kind of really defined by data security governance and then the risk and compliance postures. And you can see here some of the features, right, that kind of align to those three kind of categories. When we've got unstructured and structured data, it's about identifying the data estate insights and getting an understanding of what our data map looks like, which is a really key piece to understanding where our data is and how is it exposed to a degree. We've got data security, which is more around our data loss prevention, our information protection, information barriers, classification labeling, all that kind of good stuff. All the stuff that, again, isn't a new problem, but is being surfaced a lot faster now with Copilot. And then our risk and compliance piece, where we might look at compliance management or our communication compliance, which might help us with creating restrictions and enforcement inside things like Teams and email. So, hey, you can't send that file from Outlook to an external party because it's got this classification label. So it's a combination of what we do to protect the data itself. I think the one thing that's kind of missing here is obviously the key piece is another key piece around user, right? And how do we do access review? And that's probably more about privileged identity management and access reviews from something like Entra ID, which you might, the AADP2 kind of planning for those in the IT department. But, it's a combination of protecting what our users can access through something like PIM and access management, and how can we secure the data that we've got, whether it's existing data or data that's created by the AI as well, based on our prompting.
It was pleasing, Mark, to see that Lifeline already had Purview in place when we started interacting with you. So that's a really positive thing. And when I look at this, back to the 20 years of infrastructure management that I've been involved in for 30 years, she's getting old. That piece is that we didn't have this sort of tools to help us do this. There's a lot of very labor intensive, a lot of process stuff, and I do feel like we in IT spent a lot of time saying no, and tools like this just help us elevate and say yes to the business. So is that how you see Purview? I mean, we need that extra layer of capability, right?
Yeah, look, I think, we started our ISO 27001 journey a good couple of years ago, and we're taking a good hard look at Purview. I think there's a couple of things. I think Microsoft have really pulled that together, pulled that DLP or data loss prevention, classification, labeling, handling, and all that sort of stuff under the one product. And I think that the way that then Copilot can be configured to respect those classifications and things, I think that's a really good story, and it certainly getting Purview up and running is not particularly hard, but then getting it across the organization and into all the nooks and crannies and the corners and everything like that, that's been a journey, to be honest. But yeah, fortunately we started that a little while ago, and it seems like it's putting us in a pretty good position for switching on the pilot and getting into Copilot and getting that to work with this. So it's
I agree. I think with Purview that you can accelerate into Purview quite quickly, and then probably that last 5-10% that we need to work hard on, which is not uncommon in
the product itself has grown quite significantly. When I first looked at it, it was more just a sort of data catalog, and then they started folding in some of the old I've forgotten what the products were, but yeah, the DLP stuff, which not that long ago was really sort of very big enterprise sort of capability, but now it seems to have trickled it down to organizations that like ourselves to be able to use that, because I can see why, you know, the Microsoft sort of landscape, they need this bit in order to make people feel confident with the Copilot thing. So I think it's that's a good story.
Yeah, and I think that last 5-10% is where we need that business engagement, right? You know,
Right.
IT can do so much, but we need the business to help be engaged around, you know, and I think a classic example around that is classification and information barriers. You know,
Yeah.
we need to understand our business units and understand their workflows to make sure that we're implementing an appropriate response for their business and their part of the business.
Yeah.
It's a critical piece.
Look, all that compliance and security is super critical. And what's really pleasing and what we've seen Microsoft shift over the last sort of 5-6 years is that, and I heard a phrase from a kickoff this financial year from one of the Microsoft leaders here in Australia, was that there's a term inside of Microsoft that's becoming used a lot, which is that security's got to be part of their DNA. So it isn't just added on afterwards or put at the back. It's part of everything they do from the beginning, right? And everything we're designing, building, has security is part of that journey, right? And it was really about, and all the way through to the individuals, like how we operate and how they actually work should be. Security's got to be part of the DNA of the business, right? Which is good to hear because it's important. Now, Chris, you've got a couple more slides I can see coming up there, and there's some new capability like where they're enhancing things. Do you want to just quickly go, because we are?
Yeah, so I guess speaking to what Mark was kind of leading for was, you know, Purview as a product has evolved and grown, and it's now currently open at public preview, the AI Hub. So the AI Hub inside your Purview view gives you that visibility of when you've got all the bells and whistles and all the extras around it, like cloud apps enabled and things like that. There's some prerequisites to get this level of information. But you can then start to see that non-compliant utilization or the potentially oversharing piece of your environment where, hang on, all of a sudden I see my organization's using a lot of ChatGPT, right? And is that acceptable? Is it the right level of usage? You know, are we comfortable with that usage? We can start to get more that visibility layer back and seeing inside what people are using and consuming of AI inside their environment. It also gives you some additional more in-depth views as well, right? Where we can see, right, where again, if we're looking at classification or sensitive information types, where we can see people are sharing credit card numbers. Again, obviously a very American screenshot, credit card information, social security number, and so on and so forth. So it's giving us that level of visibility that we need as an IT department to help educate our users and our business managers on what's going on inside the organization in terms of their utilization of AI. And this is just obviously the start of the AI Hub. It's going to obviously grow and expand over time as well. But right now, available as a public preview, I believe, and you can't quote me on this one, but I believe that this is going to become GA later this year, maybe early next year. So, but right now, still in public preview. So you'll see features kind of appear and disappear potentially.
Okay, it's a good maybe time to summarize. So, where we've taken the journey today, right? We've talked about some of the capabilities. What I think we should all take away is that AI is here and our people are using it, right? Already, whether we sanction or give them the tools to do that or not, they are going to make use of it, particularly people working in that knowledge and information type roles. Right, is there. So if we accept that it's going to be used, then we probably want to set some guardrails around that. We want to make sure that we're doing that well and governing it. And there are tools available from the Microsoft landscape to do that. For example, Purview, right? And what it does then is it's really building into a mature product set to help with that stuff.
Building like the slide selection, building that foundation, right, around your data security. It does coincide with, you still need to look at the user access componentry of this. And I think there's a separate kind of conversation that happens around user access, but even cohesively, you need to also look at what am I doing to protect the data that I'm sharing to AI and it's generating for me. So these are just three really simple areas where a foundation is really essential. And
while we go and check, see if there's any questions and comments in the chat, maybe I'll ask Mark and then Sandra just to summarize and maybe add some final comments. Do you want to go first, Mike?
Yeah, look, I think being prepared, it's always easier to do a bit of prepared, even if it's only thinking about these sort of things up front, was key for me. I come from a data thing. I can't wait to get going on, you know, not just the Copilot AI, but using Azure, OpenAI, and those sort of things as well. But I feel like I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I just jumped in there and started experimenting. So I've done a bit of internal sort of messaging around trying to get alignment, build that sort of, we're actually doing another piece of work, which is incorporating some of this, but around an AI policy and governance framework, which doesn't sound too exciting, but I think that will enable us to what I call run at speed, because we will have made some decisions and have some, I suppose, a framework where people can come along with what I call half-baked ideas, and we can test that rather than being, no, you shall not use AI, because if you do that, they're going to use it anyway. So I think, just doing a bit of preparation, a bit of homework. Everybody's keen to get going, but I think, setting that up front and setting those expectations up front. And then the other key piece, which is important, is the adoption piece. So to your point, Paul, remembering to use it in the first place. Some people are really good at it, like my techie devs guys, they use it all the time. I'm perhaps not quite there yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, maybe it's our age, Mark, that's the barrier there, not the tech.
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly. Like, guys, do ask a question if you'd like to in the chat. We're checking there, not seeing too much in there, but lots of people around still, so feel free. And Sandra, any last comments while we wrap up? Anything you'd like to add to the mixer?
Yeah, definitely. So there are I think a lot of when I speak to customer on the data security piece, right, and then quite often that from a project point of view, it makes sense that we get a compliance or purview ready. We have that protection on the data, and then we added the AI on top of it. But I want to say that we do have a lot of a different way to secure the data. Because that we add a lot of SharePoint Online kind of restrict access and then protection on that. So for transitioning period, those are quite a lot of them are actually no extra cost. It will be part of your ME3 license, things like that. So that I would say that good to explore if you don't really have the compliance or the data security piece ready, because normally from my experience, the technical part is easy for the policies. The more difficult part for purview, data security conversation, information protection DLP is to understand the business need to line up the policy. So that might take a little bit of time. But we do have a transitioning a solution for the transitioning period. So don't wait to explore a little bit more. If you got any questions and want to know more, just come to us and then we can explain. Depends on your kind of insurance requirement, legal requirement on those things. You might have to get the data security ready. You might can leverage the transition of the solutions. So we can talk a bit more on that, definitely. And cubesys definitely can help on that type of conversation as well. So we can do quite a few things together rather than just doing one after another. So that's how we notice the some of the challenges in the conversation. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandra. Okay, I think we'll call a wrap there. I'm not seeing too many questions in time. We must have done an awesome job of keeping people informed today, which is great. Let me just wrap up then by thanking Chris for the time, Mark for spending your time here, and Sandra as well. Hopefully you're feeling a bit better soon, Sandra, and get well. And for everybody else on the call, thank you very much for your time. We do always send out information post-event, so we will check your inbox and we'll send out lots of information that we talked about. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys, for your time. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.